Welcome, everybody, once again to these weekend teachings that we're doing. And once again, the lectionary has us in the book of Matthew. I've really actually been enjoying this. We started a few weeks ago walking through the parables of Jesus. I think we spent a couple of weeks in Matthew 13. And then last week I had this teaching on the parable, or not the parable, but the story of these two kingdoms, the kingdom of Herod and the kingdom of Jesus. And I had a few of you reach out to me saying that you were encouraged by the teaching last week, and thanks for letting me know that. I appreciated that. And as I said, even in last week's teaching, that was one of my favorite stories. It's always been one of my favorite stories, and so impactful, this contrast between King Herod and between Jesus. Well, here we are now, later on in Matthew chapter 14, and this week we have assigned to us verse 22 verse 33. It's a very familiar story if you've been around the church for a while. It's the story of Jesus walking out in the water. In fact, actually, even as I say that, probably if you haven't been around the church before, even me saying Jesus walking on the water, that may jog a reference to you of some joke that you've heard or some thought that you've seen shared somewhere about Jesus. Well, we're going to read the story where Jesus walks out on the water. And as I just gave you the context of what's taking place in this story, Jesus has just finished with this great crowd of people out in the wilderness, where he has demonstrated the compassion and the mercy and the kindness of God, and where he has fed this crowd using the disciples to help him along. And we pick up the story then immediately after that. In fact, that's the first word that we come to in verse 22, and this is what it says. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. And I wonder, when I read that, what was going on there? How was it that Jesus dismissed the crowd? Was he just patiently greeting everybody and waiting for them to go, giving them that last little bit of time that they may have needed with him? I suppose probably that was the case, but he recognized his friends, the disciples, had a journey to go, and he wanted to send them on their way. After he dismissed them, he went up a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves, because the wind was against it. Well, I want to show you some pictures to set the context a little bit better if I can do that. In 2007, I traveled to Israel on a study tour. I'm going to show my screen here. And these are some pictures of the Sea of Galilee that I want to show you through, and the mountainous area that was all around the Sea of Galilee. And who knows, maybe this very location, which I'm about to show you here, is the place that Jesus went to go and pray. This area certainly has a long history of people, sages and saints, heading off into the caves of this area to do that very thing, to pray. So this picture that I'm showing you here, you can see, is of the Sea of Galilee. We're beginning to hike up one of the mountains just off the edge of it. And this little town here, right here, is the village of Capernaum. Capernaum is the place where Jesus chose to live. It was the hometown of Peter. It was where Jesus chose to live for the 3 years of his ministry. And the Sea of Galilee, many people believe it to be a saltwater body, which makes sense because we often equate the word sea with a saltwater body. But actually it is a lake. It is a freshwater lake, and it's not very big, as you can see, but just so beautiful, the geography around here. This evening where we were taking this hike was one of the real highlights of my tour in Israel. The light, the color, the sun, the temperature that evening was just so beautiful. And here we are with our tour group beginning to hike up the side of this mountain. Here we are making our way up. This is from another angle. I didn't put the pictures in great order, but you get an idea of the jagged cliffs that are bordering all the way around the Sea of Galilee. More still, and you can see evidence of caves and those kind of things. Well, that's where people oftentimes would go to sit and to have solitude and to be away while looking over the body of water and to pray. Making our way further up, again, you can see my camera picking up some of the light. And here we are looking up, again, more evidence of the caves. I included this picture. I love it because you can see up there, way up there in the top, you can see the moon up here, which I always loved in that picture here. Again, just a beautiful picture looking out of the Sea of Galilee. More still of us heading up. Lovely light looking back down again. And I think maybe this is the last picture. You can tell when we were up on the top, it was quite windy. Our hair was being blown everywhere. But just an amazing, amazing experience to be there in that location. I'll see if I can pull this back again and bring us back into our screen. Just give me a second here. There we go. Okay. So this is the location anyway, somewhere in this neighborhood where Jesus has gone away to pray while his friends are off on the boat in the lake, in the middle of the lake, as the wind and the waves begin to pick up. And it's quite a common thing in that area for storms, freak storms, to sweep in over and to put quite a effect on the lake as these young men were experiencing themselves. And they're out there all night, and we know that because of what it says in verse 24. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, and here it is, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. Now, this is where a good reader should just stop right away and ask the very obvious question, why is he walking on the lake? Like, why did he do this? My kids, they love the movie Napoleon Dynamite. Napoleon, one scene, I think it was his grandmother or Kip maybe, yells at Napoleon to make his own dang quesadilla, right? And I thought about that for some reason when I was studying this passage, because I was like, Jesus, why didn't you just take the dang boat? Why didn't you get on a boat and sail over or walk around the outside of the lake? It wasn't that far. Why is he walking? It's the obvious question that you need to ask when you're reading the story. These things are taking place that are out of the ordinary. We've heard them so many times, we just glance over and, yeah, of course, he's walking across the lake. Why? Why is he walking across the lake? Why not just sail over or walk over? You get the idea, right? Well, maybe there are a few reasons as to why Jesus chose on this particular evening to walk across the lake. One reason may be because Jesus is wanting to demonstrate to his disciples that he has power over the abyss. Now, what do I mean by that expression? Well, in Jesus' day, and especially in Israel, the lake, the bodies of water, people were deathly afraid of bodies of water. The Mediterranean, even the Sea of Galilee, they were afraid of them, certainly because they were desert dwellers, but also because people went out there and died. And it was kind of believed that the lakes and the waters was the place of the ghouls, the place of the ghosts, the place of the underworld. And so it makes really good sense then. The first thing that they shout, it's a ghost. Of course they think it's a ghost, because that's where they thought the ghosts were, in the lake, in the abyss. And Jesus walking across the water in this location is saying to these guys, I have power over all of these imaginary ghosts and ghouls in the abyss. I have power over all of these things, which is something that throughout the Gospels, Jesus has always been wanting to demonstrate. The very first thing that happens in Mark's Gospel, for example, when Jesus' ministry begins, he right away in a synagogue tangles with the demonic presence, with the spiritual evil. And Jesus is always wanting throughout the Gospels to make clear to us that he has power over all of the forces, the spiritual forces, the physical forces of evil in this world. And I think there's something about him just striding across this with confidence. There is a demonstration of his power over the abyss. And these guys are going to pick up on this. Remember, they're his disciples. They are his students. So in all of these things, just like you and I, we are learning something about who Jesus is, about his character, and about his nature. Well, maybe the other reason, though, why Jesus is walking on the water is because he's wanting to reveal to himself that he is one who is like Moses. Now, why do I say that? Well, I say that on one hand because Matthew's gospel was primarily written to a Jewish audience. And Matthew is often making these connections between Jesus and the ministry of Jesus and the ministry of Moses. And in doing that, what he is wanting to demonstrate for his reader is that Moses, yes, Moses was their great leader, the great hero of the people of Israel, but in the coming of Jesus, one even greater than Moses has come. So what's the connection here? Well, the connection here, we go back to the story before, and what's Jesus been doing? He's been out in the wilderness, and what was he doing in the wilderness? He was feeding people, right? Just like the people of Israel believed that Moses had fed them with bread from heaven, Jesus had been feeding them with bread from heaven. And there was so much. In the Moses story, they could only take as much as they were given for that particular day. But in Jesus' story, something even greater was taking place. Now they had 12 basketfuls of bread that were being left over. You see how this is going. Well, then, what is the other great story of the life of Moses? Oh, yeah, that story, right, where he led the people through the water. And what is Jesus doing here now? He's walking through the water. You see, there are all these connections that Matthew is often wanting to make for the reader, the Jewish reader, to help them see the allusions of Moses, but to see that Jesus is even greater still. Well, you say, well, how is Jesus greater still in this story here? Well, you see, in the book of Job, in Job chapter 9, verse 8, there's this reference where Job is speaking to his friends about who God is. And he says this, "Oh, God is the one who shakes the earth from its place and makes its pillars tremble. He speaks to the sun and it does not shine. He seals off the light of the stars. He alone stretches out the heavens and treads on the waves of the sea." Right? So in Jesus walking across the water, there's a demonstration, yes, that he's like Moses, but he is even more than Moses. He is like the one that Job was speaking of. He is like God. Jesus is being made known here in walking across the water as being the one who treads on the waves. That's why he walked across the water on this day. That's why he didn't take a boat. That's why he didn't walk around the outside, because he was wanting to disclose something to his disciples. He's just been speaking in parables to everybody and then whispering off in the corner to his disciples to help them understand things of the kingdom of God. Jesus has a special ministry of revelation to his disciples, and that's what he's doing here. He's wanting his disciples to see something about him. What does he want them to see? That he is the one who treads on the waves, right? Which is exactly the conclusion then, looking ahead, a little foreshadowing at the end of the story, that the young men are going to come to when they exclaim, "Truly, you are the Son of God." That's why he walked across the waves, because he was wanting them to understand and see this incredible point. Well, let's carry on. Jesus immediately said to them in the midst of their fear, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid," which is the expression that the angels and the presence of God is always saying to people. Don't be afraid, take courage, it is I. And as we hear those beautiful words of Jesus, I wonder even how they may be landing in your own heart today. Maybe there are things that you are experiencing in your life where you are afraid right now. And I don't think that necessarily the idea of being afraid is a wrong thing. This is a human response to our experience. And sometimes preachers and teachers can chastise us because God's always saying, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. But I think the better way to look at it is that we are afraid. But in the midst of us being afraid, God looks at us and says, it's okay. It is I. I'm with you. I am the one that walks on the waves. I am with you. Don't be afraid. I'm here with you. And so I wonder what it is that has you afraid this weekend. I've been thinking about COVID-19, and we are reading so much in the news, and maybe you're experiencing this as well, about the second wave, and we're anticipating the fall and wondering what's going to go on. And in the midst of the unknown, there can creep up into my own heart this experience of fear and wonder and worry. And in the midst of that, Jesus is saying to me, don't be afraid. It's me. I'm the one that walks on the waves, and I'm with you. Or maybe you've experienced recently a diagnosis of sickness of some variety, and you are afraid. And that's okay. That's a normal experience. And Jesus looks into you and says, don't be afraid. Have courage. It's me. I'm with you. And he is. He's with us. He's with us as we journey. "Lord," Peter said, "if it's you, tell me to come out into the water." "Come," Jesus said. And I love that too. It's almost like Peter is just, there's this little well of faith that's now rising up in him. And he's always, of course, the guy that's the first on the edge and he's adventuring out. But there's this little well of faith that's rising up in Peter. And Jesus in his ministry to Peter invites Peter to come out and put that faith to the test. Give it a shot. Take a risk. And I wonder maybe there are areas where you feel that and you're feeling the urge to step out into something, and maybe Jesus, even in there now in this teaching, is urging you, encouraging you to step out, have faith, step out into that risk, try that thing, step out into that new thing, take courage. It is I. He is with you. I wonder, maybe there is something that Jesus is inviting you to step out into. Well, so Peter did it, right? Of course he did. And he got out down into the boat and he walked in the water. He's doing it. You can just imagine him kind of stepping out there. He's doing it. He's getting it, right? He's getting his way. He's coming towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, we know that experience, don't we? Oh, we're doing it. Yeah. Oh boy. And then we start to look at all the circumstances that are going around on us, right? And immediately we start, oh boy, what have I gotten myself into? No. And we're looking back. I should go back. I should go back. This isn't good, right? And you know that experience, right? What does Jesus do in the midst of that? And that, again, that very human experience, Jesus comes over and he takes him by the hand and he catches him. Remember, he said, it is I. Take courage. He's with us in this midst. He's with us as we step out. He's with us as we try these things. And then he says, you of little faith, why did you doubt? And I think we can read these chastisements of Jesus with this very stern, you have little faith. And maybe that's because preachers like me have wagged our finger as we've called out faith into you. But I don't know necessarily that that's what's going on. There's clearly a correction that Jesus is giving to his disciples. He's like, guys, you got too little faith. You need to have courage. Why did you doubt? Let's go back over that. Who am I? I'm the one that walks across the waves, right? I'm that guy. That's who I'm making known to you today. So why? You don't need to doubt. Why did you doubt? You don't need to doubt. I'm with you. Take courage. I'm with you in the midst of this storm. I'm here. You did the right thing stepping out into that boat. You were doing a good job. You were making it. So why doubt? Don't stop. You see how that goes? I think that's probably what's happening in this moment. Jesus, to his disciple, to his friend, he's giving him instructions saying, you were on the right path. So don't doubt. Right? Keep going. And when they climbed into the boat and the wind died down, then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. And that's where the story ends, and I think that's where our teaching should end for this week. I trust that it's brought you some encouragement, leaning into him, this one who walks upon the waves, this one who welcomes you to step out, this one who in the midst of the storms and the challenges that you're facing, this one who looks at you and says, take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid. May the Lord bless you in this week. Much love to you all.